In the musical Hamilton, Angelica Schuyler sings that she will never be satisfied. She was wrong, and economics can tell us why. Analyzing consumer behavior includes looking at the subjective feelings that motivate purchases. In order to mathematically describe how these purchases explain consumer satisfaction, we talk about these in terms of the theoretical unit of measurement, the util.
Satisfaction, not necessarily something you think about when you think about math, but economics. Here we are. So, we're going to start off by looking at two basic functions that we use and two different graphs that we use when we talk about satisfaction and utility with economics. The first is going to be our utility function. Now again, it is a graph, so you're going to have the basic graph form, but for this one, while we still have quantity on the bottom, much like we have had for all of our supply and demand curves, we're actually going to have total utility on the side. And then for this utility function, you're going to get this parabola shape. Now, this is the utility function. It shows the utility of the consumer gets from the consumption of a product. So, next up, we're going to have our marginal utility curve. It's going to replace the side that has the total utility with marginal utility. And you're going to see, whoops, let's draw that line in there. This is what we call the budget curve. We're going to get to the budget constraint in a second. So the marginal utility curve, you have the budget curve, because it kind of budgets what, it kind of limits the consumer's budget, right? And everything that's within the budget constraint is what is possible for them to buy, a bit like the opportunity curves back from the beginning of the year. And nothing outside the budget curve. They can't purchase anything that's outside the budget curve. So, all of the bundles all of the affordable consumption bundles, everything within the budget constraint, are the consumption possibilities. Basically given prices and the consumer's income, what the consumer can buy. The constraint is limiting the cost of the consumer's consumption to no more than the consumer's income. Now, you're going to notice, for those of you who are in calculus, that this budget curve is actually the derivative graph of the first graph we saw, the utility function. And you'll notice that at a certain point this budget curve is going to reach zero. Now once this budget curve reaches zero, basically once the amount of utility that a person would get out of a good or service reaches zero, they're going to stop buying it, right? Because you're not going to buy something if it makes you unhappy. So that's an important concept you're going to want to remember as we go further into this unit. So, the key thing you're going to want to remember for the free response and for the AP test itself is the principle of diminishing marginal utility, which states that any additional unit of a good or service consumed adds less to total utility than does the previous unit. And we saw this, right? That was what happened with our marginal utility curve, where it went down each time, and with the utility function, where it increased by less each time. Now, one question that you're probably going to have to answer on a free response somewhere in your micro class is the optimal consumption bundle. So let's say that we have two goods, good A and good B, and the price of good A is $4 and the price of good B is $2, which we have right there. So we're going to set up our graph, and we're going to put the quantity of goods A and B, the utility of goods A and B, the marginal utility of goods A and B, and the marginal utility per dollar of A and B is going to be our categories. Now our first row is going to be all zeros, right? You're not buying anything, so you're not getting any joy out of anything, right? But the next couple graphs, the next couple rows are where it's going to start to get interesting. You're going to notice that the marginal utility is simply how much the utility, the total utility increases each time. Sorry, that instead of utility of A and utility of B, that should be total utility of A and total utility of B. That's my bad. But you'll notice that it's going up by the marginal utility each time, and that the marginal utility per dollar is going down each time because, much like the marginal utility, it is decreasing with each good purchased. So this is an equation known as the optimal consumption rule, which is effectively the marginal utility of A over the cost of A will equal the marginal utility over the cost of B. So this is that marginal utility per dollar, and we're basically, the optimal consumption rate is when the marginal utility per dollar of two separate products is equal. This is for when you're trying to choose between two separate products and trying to figure out how to allocate your money. This is the one that will, in theory, give you the most utility because it'll give you the maximum amount of each good.
Until next time, this is Duncan Fox with Indoor Economics.